Well, everyone, welcome back to another week of what's coming out this week in indie. I know a very intuitive and very original name, but I mean, it's what we started with. It's what we'll keep going with. Um, as always, I'm joined by the wonderful Mike Zoke, who has a plethora of wide-ranging and amazing indie games for you to check out this week. And I think we're just going to dive straight into it. Loot Light, I saw this straight away. It looks absolutely just very cozy and appealing from a pixel art standpoint, but maybe you can enlighten me a bit more on what it's actually about.
So, Loot Light is a roguelike arcade game, and roguelikes have been a genre that when they first started coming out, I wasn't the biggest fan of them. But as time goes on, and they evolve more than what they used to be as just like Rogue Legacy and Enter the Gungeon clones,
Hmm.
see the greater appeal in them. And Loot Light has a really kind of unique premise to it. So it's an arcade style game. It's not your typical roguelike that's a platformer or a top down shmup. Instead, you take control of a variety of different heroes that had treasures of theirs stolen from them, and your goal is to try and fight through these procedurally generated levels and biomes to try and get those treasures back for them. Each hero has like a different play style, different abilities, so there's a little more variety there than just the generation of the levels. But it also just has like a really nice art style. I really enjoy the look of it. It looks like a roguelikes aren't a game that I typically associate with being cozy, but this and like Moonlighter, I think would definitely
Hmm.
fall under the cozy roguelike genre.
As cozy as a roguelike can be when you're dying consistently.
Yep.
Um, but I mean, speaking of coziness, I mean, the next game on the list, I suppose, for lack of a better word, oozes coziness in every way, shape, and
Yes.
form.
So
Everdale, or Everdell, sorry.
Yes, Everdell. So Everdell is originally a tabletop board game, one of the greatest that has ever been made. It's a personal favorite of mine, and it is now getting a digital version on July 28th. It's the premise of the game is fairly simple. You gather resources to try and build constructions, and you're recording different critters and stuff to try and get your city to thrive. You're competing with the other players to see whose city can become the best. So it's not a typically complex idea, but it has a wonderful, beautiful, cozy, like just perfect child fantasy book art style to it. Like picture like covers of your favorite books from when you were a kid, and this has like an art style that goes right along with those fantasy titles. But it's a lot of fun. I
Mhm.
mean, I'm a big fan of digital version of board games in general. I probably have 50 hours in the digital version of Wingspan,
Mhm.
and that's just one. But I think a lot of people that enjoy tabletop gaming that maybe don't have the people to play with in real life or due to COVID and things like that should really look into Everdell because it's truly a quite amazing game.
Hmm. And usually, I suppose card games are things that kind of turn me off. But I think ever since Inscription, I've been a bit more inclined to give them a chance. And I don't, I think that's maybe like that is the pinnacle of card games. So I don't know if that'll be anything I should be expecting. But I mean, I saw the little turtle or tortoise in his little hat and cane. I was like,
Yep.
I'm sold. I will play this 100%.
You're
And
pretty easy to get sold on things like that. Get a cute critter
show,
with
yeah.
some kind of gimmick, and that's it. Albino deer sold.
Well, it
Just wait.
obviously
Just wait until we get further down on the list. There's a game you're gonna love.
Well, it obviously worked because last week when we were talking about Stray, the day it came out, I played it and I think I've 8 hours in, right? And I finished it. But this game takes 5 hours to complete. And I swear I spent 3 hours just like looking at the cat and like purring and meowing and everything. I was like, this is adorable. I can't move past anything else. Um, and I mean, you have picked the ultimate best game for me now with this next one because I saw this immediately and I was like, this is this could give me a warm, cozy hug, as I say every week. Bear and
Uh,
breakfast, the name alone.
it's been on my radar for a very long time. It comes out July 28th. Any fans of games like Stardew Valley, Garden Story, Graveyard Keeper, that kind of action adventure slash sim top down pixel style game, Bear and Breakfast is for you. You play as a bear who finds a cabin in the woods and decides to turn it into a bed and breakfast. So you meet all kinds of people, all kinds of friends. You try to upgrade your bear and breakfast to bring in more people to get more money. But it's just really cute, really cozy. You're a bear named Hank. There's worse things in the world to be than a bear named Hank.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it basically turns into a money-making bed and breakfast scheme for unsuspecting tourists. So maybe there's some naughtiness to your bear as well.
But honestly, I mean, you could make any bear infinitely more adorable with a name like Hank. So
Ah,
it
but
just the laid back calmness of it. But maybe that's what'll get me. Maybe he's vicious, and maybe they're not showing me a
he
side to
is
it
a
in this
teenager.
trailer.
He's just a teenager.
Hmm.
You never know what they're up to.
Never know. Never know.
The former teenager, I can vouch for.
Now, while this game, while Bear and Breakfast may scare me a little bit with the stuff he might get up to, the next game on this list, I mean, what were you doing, Mike? Why'd you put this on the list? I had to watch the trailer and I didn't even get through it. It was so scary. Uh,
Okay, so
Ghost Watchers, yeah.
I have to include horror games. I'm a horror enthusiast. We had Madison last week. We have Ghost Watchers this week. It's another co-op online horror game where you explore and hunt ghosts in abandoned houses. And yeah, it's just very terrifying. It's first person. It's very got a fairly realistic art style. It's full of jump scares and creepy noises and just haunting atmospheres. It is going to make people's skin crawl. And the best part is that you can do all of that screaming and shitting yourself while you're playing with your friend.
It certainly, at least from the trailer alone, looks like a very much more polished version of Phasmophobia. So I'm
Yes,
hoping we get
that's
some
what
of
it
that
reminds me
similar
of a lot.
sort of, yeah, I hope we get that sort of similar enjoyment, but also scare factor out of this game as well.
Agreed.
So horror enthusiasts, this is the one for you. If you're like me and love a nice, warm, cozy game, maybe Bear and Breakfast, I suppose. They both coincidentally come out on the same day. All the games I should mention have come out on July 28th so far.
Yes. Well,
So
July 20th is the
there is
day.
something on July 28th for everyone.
Speaking
um,
of, we have our Japan game of the week next.
yes, I'm going to let you pronounce this one because I feel like I'll butcher it.
Humaju Remilia Scarlet Symphony. I'm not saying that a second time, but it will be in the description for you to copy and paste into your search bar. It is a 2D side-scrolling game, action game, and the reason why I picked it specifically isn't just because it has a very Japanese game, and we made the joke last week, and now I have to always include very Japanese games in here. But it is actually it uses characters from a large Japanese multimedia franchise called Touhou. I might also be saying that wrong, but it's Touhou.
Mhm.
I really loved the Touhou game that was on Game Pass for a little bit called Lunar Nights. So that's why I chose this. I just saw that franchise mention was like, I'm interested
Mhm.
because it takes those very like almost sci-fi fantasy type characters and makes it a gothic representation. But it has Touhou has some of the best music in video games that I've ever heard. Phenomenal soundtracks, great gameplay, awesome characters. I'm honestly very thrilled. I didn't even realize this was coming out, but it will likely be a day one for me
Mhm.
if it's anything like Lunar Nights.
Well, also coming out on July 28th. I definitely, at least from the trailer alone, got very Castlevania vibes off it. Very
Yes,
similar sort
that's
of
what the
gameplay
series is
style.
very much like. It's very much Castlevania.
Mm. So for any fans of that, this is probably definitely worth checking out.
Yes, except for it
Uh,
has a lot of very cute magic women.
okay, so if you weren't a fan of hulking husks of men in Castlevania, you will be a
Correct.
fan of this game.
But you
Uh,
want powerful, cute women that could destroy you with a flick of their pinky. Then this series is for you.
I don't. You put me in a really precarious position, so I have no idea how to segue on to the next game. So I'm just going to do it. Hex of Lick or Lich. Now, this is the one
I say rich.
Lich. Okay, we're going to go with that. And if we both get it wrong, at least we're in it together. This comes out on July 29th. Tell me a bit about this.
So it's another roguelike, because there's always roguelikes, but it's a spell crafting turn-based roguelike. So you're basically the gameplay loop centers around you forging spells from different hexes that you find and using them to generate different kinds of spells to basically clear out dungeons that are full of different enemies like robots, eldritch horrors, so think like Cthulhu and stuff like that. Um, and you're basically trying to obtain all of these powerful artifacts and further enhance your abilities. I'm not certain which abilities are permanent and which ones aren't. But I believe that there is some kind of progression in this with the different abilities that you can get, so you won't always be stuck back at phase one with absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It gives me, in a weird way, kind of Inscription vibes. The gameplay is wildly different, but what they're trying to do with the mixing up of the roguelike genre in an interesting way that a lot of people won't expect is kind of the vibe that I get from this.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have me sold by the word Inscription alone. I mean, we're coming on to the next game now, which we talked about. It's, I suppose, its second entry to the series, Azure Striker Gunvolt 2, a couple of weeks ago. Now we're talking about the third entry in this series. Funnily enough, named Azure Striker Gunvolt 3. Who would have guessed it?
But to be fair, those are only their names in the US. They have way different, more Japanese names that are released in Japan.
Okay, perfect. So
that's like the Resident Evil change. You know, it was Biohazard and then Resident Evil. It's like the same thing.
Mm. So with regards to this third entry, are we expecting something similar to 2, or is it something completely different?
So what they've done with the series so far with 1 and then 2 and then now 3 is they continue to build off of each entry. So Azure Striker Gunvolt 3, unlike 2 that we talked about previously, 2 was just a port going to more platforms. Azure Striker Gunvolt 3 is a completely new title. It is going to start off as a Switch exclusive, but it has a new protagonist that you can play as named Kieran, as well as the series-long protagonist who is Gunvolt himself. But it seems to be really mixing up the mechanics that you experience throughout the game, because each character that you've played as throughout the series so far, there's been 2 main characters that you have played as. One of them is a striker who are basically these meta-humans with enhanced abilities, and one of them is just a regular human who has a grudge against them, is trying to kill them. Kieran seems to be has a different perspective than either. We haven't really been given a lot of details about where they are kind of on the spectrum of striker or fuck strikers. But they have a unique playstyle, at least, whereas Gunvolt's abilities really center around being able to manipulate time and speed. There seems to be more about precision, which I find really interesting, because for a lot of the combat, you just kind of shoot people and then you spark off electricity and it auto hits them. And while that sounds lame while you're going 99 miles per hour throughout levels, it's quite fun.
Well, so it sounds like kind of more of what you love, but also a bit of new addition to it as well, which will keep new players enthusiastic. Kind of,
what I like about it is Azure Striker Gunvolt is by Inti Creates, who are former Mega Man and Castlevania creators. So this series specifically is following the Mega Man Z or the Mega Man X games, where you play as Zero. So each game kind of builds itself in a similar way as the first 3 Mega Man Z games, where you play as Zero, where you just play as Zero, and then you play as Zero and someone else, then you play as Zero and a different other person, and your abilities kind of alter throughout it. They keep letting you play as Zero so that you have that play style and that character that you're already attached to and can experience, but they give you another character with a story that runs in parallel to his to offer new gameplay ideas for you to adjust to without stripping away everything that you're used to.
Well, certainly sounds like for any fans of the series or anyone looking to jump in, it's certainly a good place to start anyways. Next game on the list that comes out on August 2nd, you had me sold straight away with the line frog-shaped grappling hook. Frogan, yes. Or Froggen or Frogan? I don't know. Froggen, let me know. This looks absolutely amazing.
So yeah, you have a grappling hook. It's shaped like a frog, and not only is it shaped like a frog, it is your best friend. That is correct. This is a throwback to the PS1 N64 era of platformers. So it's got more of a retro-y vibe to its art style to it. It's smaller in scope than a lot of modern platformers might be, but if you were someone like myself who grew up during that era and have been looking for a game of similar virtue to some of the games that we played during that time, Froggun is A, right up your alley, and B, better than all of those because you have a grappling hook shaped like a frog and he's your best friend.
What more to say?
What more to say?
I mean, honestly, from that alone, if you're on the fence about getting it, maybe you should commit to buying it. Um, that was absolutely awful. I'm so sorry.
Gonna
Swiftly,
make me hop right out of here.
swiftly move on from this so I don't get embarrassed any further. We've gone from nice little 2D platformer to just pure pandemonium. Turbo Golf Racing out on August 4th.
Golf racing.
Give
So
me a
yeah,
little bit
Turbo
about this.
Golf Racing is my required Game Pass pick of the week because I do Game Pass stuff, so I know about Game Pass, and Turbo Golf Racing is on Game Pass. It also looks cool, and neat. As a matter of fact. More seriously, fans of Rocket League, I think specifically, are really going to enjoy this game because it's a very similar concept where you're basically driving a turbo-powered vehicle to play a sport, except for in this one, instead of soccer, it's racing while playing golf, which sounds overwhelming, but if you watch a single gameplay clip, it looks absolutely amazing. So yeah, it's very reminiscent of Rocket League. That's really the only game in my mind that I'm able to compare it to. That, or if you ever, I guess, played Halo Forge or custom games where you drove the warthogs around to move the golf balls into the golf holes. It's kind of like that, except for not slow and boring as shit. It is instead very fast paced, overwhelming, and you can just destroy your friends by making them explode off of the map and try and get that birdie.
Sounds like one to pick up for all sort of racing and sports fans alike. Definitely sounds like one of those weird, wacky sort of sport games. I'm thinking of other titles that have kind of created their own sports and just like thrown them into stuff. The one that's completely gone off the tip of my tongue, which was on roller skates throwing a ball at people. That came out. Maybe the viewers can enlighten us in the comments as to what that game was again. Knockout City, that's the one.
Knockout
I remember it. Thank God you wouldn't. I sound so unprofessional in this bit, but yes, I do know what that game is. But alongside that, we obviously have. I think this is the star pick for the week. I mean, obviously,
the star pick of the week.
This next one's the star pick of the week. I mean,
every single time it gets released, it is automatically the star pick of the week. If you haven't played this game yet, A, you're missing out. B, I don't like you. And C, it's going to be on your phone soon. So you have the perfect opportunity to play it. And if you don't, then we're going back to B. It's Papers, Please.
Yes.
And Papers, Please is one of the best indie games ever made, in my opinion. I love this game. It's amazing. You get selected by the lottery to basically get a job working as a border agent. You have to verify people's passports, their immigration papers, work visas, and stuff like that. And you can either approve them for entry into your country or deny them entry into your country. There's a lot of politics and war and stuff. I mean, it's a fictional world, but obviously you can connect all of it to real life events that have happened in our past, and even in our present in some parts. But it's very good. It's very hard because at the same time you're getting paid shit. You have to try and keep your mother, your wife, and your kids alive without letting them freeze, starve, or die from lack of medical availability. But you get paid nothing. So you can take bribes. You can work with rebels to try and overthrow your government. There's a lot of awesome shit in this game, and it's amazing, and I love it, and you should play it.
100%. I think you hit the nail on the head talking about all the things you have to look after in this game, and I think that's one of the things that kind of really draws me to games like this. I recently came up playing This War of Mine, which again is a fantastic indie game that everyone should check out. There's an element in those games that obviously if you play the traditional game, you might come across a side quest and maybe you make the wrong choice, but there's no real sort of consequence to that. You tend to just keep going and you can level up in a different way and you end up being completely overpowered. But in this sense, I think like games This War of Mine, Papers, Please, as you mentioned, there's so much to manage and there's no way you're going to have enough resources to manage everything, that you really do have to pick your choices. And sometimes that means sacrificing.
Let my wife die or my mom die.
Yeah, exactly. And it sounds very bleak, but at the end of the day, it is an extremely addictive and fun game alongside that, which it balances very well.
It is.
So, I mean, this, I think we can both agree that this would be our star pick for the week, that if you're going to play one of them, at least play this if you haven't already.
Papers, Please is amazing. So good.
adding off from that, I think I can already predict what your number one pick is for this week, as we just talked about it. But if you'd pick maybe two other games altogether that people should at least give a go out, or that you're most looking forward to this week, what would they be, Mike?
This is probably one of the hardest weeks we've had so far for me to narrow down.
Hmm.
I'm not going to pick Azure Striker Gunvolt 3 just because I've talked about this series so much. So I'm going to go with Bear and Breakfast,
Yes.
which I'm extremely excited for. And I think Hex of the Lich is another one that I'm excited for.
Very good. Well, I mean, all, of course, again, as every week we come by, very different picks, a lot for everyone to go and enjoy. I mean, if there's any games we've missed out on, please leave them down in the comments below. Always love to hear about new indie games that are coming out this week. And I'm sure the next time we're on a call, there'll be even more amazing games to check out. And it's just getting so overwhelming at this stage. I don't have the time for all these.
We're not even into the holidays yet.
No. Come November, October, and then eventually December, there will be no time. There won't be enough hours in the day to play all the amazing indie games that are coming out. But yep. I mean, enjoy it while it lasts, people. Enjoy your choice while you have it. Then everything will turn into a you must make a choice sort of game. But again, Mike, it's been an absolute pleasure as always every week. Look forward to seeing you next time on the show. And thank you everyone for listening. You can find Mike's socials and all the great stuff he does in the description below. And of course, you can follow Gaming Sandbox on all the available platforms as well. Thank you so much for this week, and we'll see you all next time.